Weekends in the 1950s were structured and routine, with Saturday chores, Sunday dinners, and family activities that brought communities together. There was no social media, streaming, or late-night shopping. Entertainment and errands followed a predictable rhythm. Post-war prosperity and booming suburban life shaped these routines, making weekends a shared cultural experience rather than just a break from work and school. Let's explore 20 strange and nostalgic facts that show just how different weekend life was in that era. Fact 1. Saturday morning was family cleaning day. If you grew up in the 1950s, you knew that Saturday morning meant one thing: cleaning. This wasn't optional, and it wasn't something you could sleep through. By 8 o'clock in the morning, everyone in the house was up and assigned their chores. Mom would have the whole day planned out, and every family member had a job to do. The vacuum cleaner would come out, the furniture polish would be opened, and the smell of cleaning products would fill the entire house. This was a time when cleaning was a family affair. Dad might be outside washing windows or cleaning the gutters while Mom was inside directing traffic. Kids had their own age-appropriate tasks. The younger ones might be dusting or picking up toys, while older kids were trusted with more serious jobs like mopping floors or cleaning bathrooms. There was no complaining either, because that's just what you did on Saturday mornings. The cleaning routine was thorough too. Carpets were vacuumed, hardwood floors were swept and mopped, furniture was dusted and polished, and windows were washed inside and out. The kitchen got a deep clean, and bathrooms were scrubbed until they sparkled. This wasn't a quick once-over. This was serious cleaning that took most of the morning. By lunchtime, the house smelled like Pine Sol and Pledge, and everything was spotless. The reason for this Saturday morning ritual was simple. During the week, both parents were busy with work, and kids were in school, so there wasn't time for deep cleaning. Saturday was the day to get the house in order before the weekend really began. Plus, Sunday was for rest and church, so Saturday was your only chance to get everything done. Nowadays, people clean whenever they have time, or they hire someone else to do it. But back in the 1950s, Saturday morning cleaning was just part of life. Fact 2. Friday night grocery shopping was entertainment. Today, grocery shopping is a chore you want to get through as quickly as possible. But in the 1950s, Friday night grocery shopping was actually a family outing. After dinner on Friday, families would pile into the car and head to the local supermarket. This wasn't just about buying food for the week. It was a social event that marked the beginning of the weekend. The supermarket on Friday night was packed with families doing the same thing. You'd see your neighbors there, stop and chat in the aisles, and kids would get excited about which new cereals or treats might make it into the cart. Stores knew that Friday night was big business, so they stayed open late, usually until 9 o'clock, which was considered really late back then. The atmosphere was almost festive, with bright fluorescent lights, clean linoleum floors, and displays of products that seemed almost magical compared to the small corner markets of previous decades. Shopping was different back then too. There were no scanners or computers, so the checker had to ring up each item individually on a mechanical cash register. This took time, and there was an art to packing groceries properly. Everything went into paper bags, and the bag boy would carefully pack them so nothing got crushed. Eggs went on top, bread was handled gently, and canned goods went on the bottom. If you were lucky, that bag boy might even carry your groceries to the car for you. Kids loved these Friday night trips because there was always a chance Mom would buy something special. Maybe it would be a box of animal crackers, or a bottle of soda pop for the weekend, or even some penny candy from the display near the checkout. The grocery store also had things you couldn't get anywhere else, like the latest magazines, comic books, and household gadgets. It was entertainment and shopping all rolled into one, and it was how families kicked off their weekend together. Fact 3. Sunday drives went nowhere. In particular, one of the strangest weekend traditions of the 1950s was the Sunday drive. After church and Sunday dinner, families would pile into the car and just drive around with no real destination in mind. This wasn't about getting somewhere. It was about the drive itself. Dad would be behind the wheel, Mom would be in the passenger seat, and kids would be in the back watching the scenery go by. These drives usually took you out into the countryside or through neighborhoods you didn't normally visit. You'd cruise down back roads, look at farms, check out new housing developments that were being built, or drive through the nice part of town to see the big houses. Sometimes you'd stop at a roadside stand to buy fresh fruit or vegetables, or you might pull over at a scenic overlook to take in the view. But mostly you just drove. The car itself was part of the experience. In the 1950s, cars were big, comfortable, and built for cruising. You'd have the windows rolled down, feeling the breeze, and maybe the radio would be playing softly in the background. There was no air conditioning in most cars, so those open windows were essential on warm days. The whole family would be together in this enclosed space, and conversations would happen naturally as the miles rolled by. Why did families do this? Part of it was that cars were still relatively new to many families, and driving was still a pleasure rather than a chore. Gas was cheap, usually around 25 cents a gallon, so taking a long drive didn't break the bank. It was also a way to relax and spend time together without the distractions of home. There was no television to watch, no phones to answer, and no yard work calling your name. It was pure, simple togetherness, and it was something families looked forward to every Sunday afternoon. Fact 4. TV dinners on metal trays were a weekend treat. When Swanson introduced the TV dinner in 1953, it revolutionized how American families thought about weekend meals. These frozen dinners came in an aluminum tray with different compartments for each part of the meal. You'd heat them up in the oven, and about 25 minutes later, you had a complete dinner with turkey, mashed potatoes, corn, and even a little dessert, all without any real cooking involved. The genius of the TV dinner was in the name itself. These meals were designed to be eaten while watching television, which was still a relatively new form of entertainment in the early 1950s. Families would set up TV trays in the living room, everyone would have their own individual dinner, and you could eat while watching your favorite shows. This was considered incredibly modern and convenient, and kids absolutely loved it. The TV trays themselves were a whole separate piece of furniture. These folding metal trays had collapsible legs and could be stored away when not in use. Each family member might have their own tray, often decorated with designs or patterns that were popular at the time. You'd set up your tray in front of your spot on the couch, carefully balance your TV dinner on top, and settle in for an evening of entertainment and eating. The meal options were limited compared to today. The original TV dinner was turkey with all the trimmings, but Swanson quickly added other varieties like fried chicken, meatloaf, and Salisbury steak. The food wasn't gourmet by any stretch, and everything tasted a bit like aluminum, but that wasn't really the point. The point was convenience and modernity. You were living in the space age, eating space age food while watching space age entertainment. Nowadays we take frozen meals for granted, but in the 1950s, eating a TV dinner on a TV tray was about as futuristic as it got. Fact 5. Drive-in theaters were the main event. Saturday night in the 1950s often meant one thing: the drive-in theater. These outdoor movie venues were everywhere during this decade, with over 4,000 drive-ins operating across the country by the end of the 50s. You'd load up the car with your family or your date, pay a couple of dollars at the entrance, and drive to your spot where you could watch a movie from the comfort of your own automobile. The drive-in experience was unique. You'd park your car facing a giant outdoor screen, and there would be rows and rows of other cars doing the same thing. Each parking spot had a speaker that you'd hang on your car window, and that's how you heard the sound. The quality wasn't great, and the speaker would crackle and buzz, but nobody seemed to mind. Before the movie started, there would be cartoons, newsreels, and most importantly, the concession stand advertisement encouraging everyone to visit the snack bar. Speaking of the snack bar, this was a big part of the drive-in experience. During intermission, which happened between the double feature, Families would walk to the concession stand to buy popcorn, hot dogs, candy, and sodas. The concession stand was usually a small building with bright lights and the smell of popcorn wafting through the air. Kids would run around playing on the swings or playground equipment that many drive-ins had set up in front of the screen. Drive-ins were popular for several reasons. They were affordable family entertainment, where you could bring the kids without worrying about them making noise or needing to use the bathroom every 5 minutes. For teenagers and young couples, drive-ins offered privacy and a place to socialize away from parents. You could watch the movie, or you could talk and not watch the movie, and nobody cared either way. As television became more popular and eventually killed off most drive-ins by the 1980s, these outdoor theaters remain one of the most iconic symbols of 1950s weekend entertainment. Fact 6. The Milkman still delivered on Saturdays. In the 1950s, the Milkman was still a regular fixture in American neighborhoods, and Saturday morning often meant finding fresh bottles of milk on your doorstep. The milk came in glass bottles with paper caps, and the milkman would deliver them early in the morning before most families were awake. You'd have a standing order for how much milk you needed each week, and the milkman knew every family on his route by name. The milk delivery routine was simple but required some cooperation. Your empty bottles from the previous delivery would be waiting outside your door, usually in a metal milk box that was designed specifically for this purpose. The milkman would collect the empties, replace them with fresh bottles, and leave you a bill at the end of the week. If you needed extra milk or wanted to add cream or chocolate milk to your order, you'd leave a note in the milk box, and the milkman would take care of it. This system worked because refrigeration was different back then. Not everyone had a big refrigerator with plenty of storage, and even if you did, making a special trip to the store just for milk seemed wasteful when the milkman could bring it right to your door. The milk was also incredibly fresh, often delivered within 24 hours of being bottled, and it came from local dairies rather than being shipped across the country. Kids loved hearing the clink of milk bottles early on Saturday morning, and there was something magical about opening the front door to find fresh milk waiting for you. The milkman became a trusted part of the community, someone who looked out for the neighborhood and would even check on elderly neighbors to make sure they were okay. By the 1970s, home milk delivery had mostly disappeared as supermarkets made it easier and cheaper to buy milk yourself. But in the 1950s, the Saturday morning milk delivery was just another normal part of weekend life. Fact 7. Banks and post offices were closed. If you needed to go to the bank or mail a package on the weekend in the 1950s, you were out of luck. Banks were closed on Saturdays and Sundays, and so were post offices. This meant you had to plan ahead and get all your banking and mailing done during the week, or wait until Monday to take care of business. This was just accepted as normal, and everyone structured their lives around these limited hours. Saturday banking wasn't even a consideration until the 1960s, when some banks started opening for a few hours on Saturday mornings. But in the 1950s, if you wanted to deposit your paycheck, withdraw cash, or talk to a banker about a loan, you had to do it during weekday business hours, which were usually 9 to 3. This meant that many working people had to take time off work just to go to the bank, or they'd try to squeeze in a banking trip during their lunch hour when the lines were longest. The post office operated on a similar schedule. They were open during the week, but come Saturday the doors were locked. If you needed stamps, you had to buy them during the week, or hope that your local drugstore sold them. Mailing a package required planning because you couldn't just drop it off whenever it was convenient. You had to make sure you got to the post office before they closed, which was often at 5 o'clock or earlier on weekdays. This limited access to banks and post offices seems crazy by today's standards, where you can do your banking online 24 hours a day and mail packages at automated kiosks. But in the 1950s, weekends were truly days off for everyone, including the people who worked at banks and post offices. The concept of convenience hadn't yet taken over American life, and people accepted that some things just had to wait until Monday morning. Fact 8. Sunday church meant your best outfit. Sunday morning in the 1950s meant getting dressed up for church, and this wasn't optional. Whether you went to church every week or just on major holidays, when you went, you wore your best clothes. For men and boys, this meant a suit and tie. For women and girls, this meant a dress, stockings, gloves, and usually a hat. Going to church in casual clothes would have been considered disrespectful, and you definitely get disapproving looks from the congregation. Getting ready for church was a whole production. Saturday night, shoes would be polished, clothes would be pressed, and everything would be laid out for the morning. Sunday morning would start early, with everyone needing time in the bathroom to get cleaned up and dressed. Mothers would help younger children with buttons and zippers, fathers would struggle with their ties, and teenage girls would fuss with their hair, trying to get it just right. By the time everyone was ready, the whole family looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Church attendance was much higher in the 1950s than it is today. It was estimated that almost half of all Americans attended church regularly, and in many communities, church was the center of social life. You didn't just go to worship, you went to see your neighbors, catch up on community news, and be seen. Not attending church could actually hurt your reputation in some communities, and many businesses wouldn't hire someone who wasn't a regular churchgoer. The service itself usually lasted about an hour, and afterwards families would stand outside and socialize. Kids would run around the church grounds while adults talked, and people would make plans for the week ahead. Some churches would have coffee and donuts in the basement, extending the social time even longer. The whole experience was about community and belonging, and your Sunday best outfit was your way of showing respect for both God and your neighbors. Fact 9. Sunday dinner was an all-day affair. Sunday dinner in the 1950s was the biggest meal of the week, and preparing it was an all-day affair that usually fell to Mom. Right after church, she'd change out of her good clothes and into an apron, and the cooking would begin. This wasn't a quick meal thrown together in 30 minutes. This was a proper dinner that might include roast beef or chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, rolls, and pie for dessert. The timing of Sunday dinner was specific too. Most families ate around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which was after church, but early enough that you still had most of the day left. The smell of roasting meat would fill the house for hours, and kids would peek into the kitchen asking when dinner would be ready. Dad might be in the living room reading the paper, while Mom orchestrated everything from the kitchen, making sure the timing was perfect so everything came out hot at the same time. The table would be set with the good dishes, not the everyday ones you use during the week. There might be a tablecloth, cloth napkins, and the silverware would be properly arranged. Everyone would sit down together, grace would be said, and then the meal would be served. Portions were generous, and you were expected to take some of everything even if you weren't a fan of certain vegetables. The meal was leisurely too, with conversation in seconds and maybe even thirds if there was enough food. What made Sunday dinner special wasn't just the food. It was the ritual of it all. This was the one meal each week where everyone slowed down and spent real time together. There was no rushing off to activities or homework or errands. The dishes could wait until later, and the afternoon. Stretched out ahead with nothing planned except maybe a nap or that Sunday drive. Sunday dinner represented everything that was important about family life in the 1950s. Togetherness, tradition, and the idea that some things were worth taking your time over. Fact 10. Radio programs were weekend listening. Even though television was becoming more popular throughout the 1950s, radio was still a big part of weekend entertainment. Saturday and Sunday had special radio programs that families gathered around to listen to, continuing a tradition that had started back in the 1930s and 40s. The radio was usually in the living room, and you'd tune in at specific times to catch your favorite shows. Saturday morning radio was all about kids. Programs like Let's Pretend and The Buster Brown Show kept children entertained with stories, music, and advertisements for products aimed at young listeners. Kids would sit right in front of the radio, imagining the scenes being described by the actors and sound effects people. Some shows encourage kids to join fan clubs or send away for special premiums, And getting mail from your favorite radio program was incredibly exciting. Sunday radio had a different feel. There were comedy shows, dramatic programs, and variety shows that appealed to the whole family. Programs like The Jack Benny Show continued on radio even as they transitioned to television, and many families preferred the radio version because it let your imagination fill in the details. There were also religious programs on Sunday mornings and big band music shows on Sunday afternoons. The experience of listening to radio was different from watching television. You had to pay attention and actively listen to follow the story. And your imagination did a lot of the work. Sound effects created the scenes, and good voice actors could make you believe you were right there with the characters. Radio also allowed you to do other things while listening. Mom might be cooking or mending clothes, Dad might be reading the paper, and kids might be playing quietly with toys. The radio provided a soundtrack to weekend life, and even as television took over, radio remained an important part of how families spent their time together. Fact 11. Card games and board games. Where prime entertainment weekend evenings in the 1950s often meant breaking out the cards or board games for family entertainment. This was how families spent time together after dinner, especially on Saturday nights when everyone could stay up a bit later. The kitchen table would be cleared, the deck of cards would come out, and everyone would settle in for a few hours of games and friendly competition. Card games were particularly popular because they didn't cost anything and everyone could play. Poker, bridge, canasta, and gin rummy were favorites among adults, while kids played games like Go Fish, Old Maid, and Crazy Eights. Some families took their card games very seriously, with regular weekly games that might include neighbors or extended family. Others kept it casual, playing for matchsticks or pennies just to make things interesting. Board games were experiencing a golden age in the 1950s. Games like Monopoly, Scrabble, and Clue were household staples, and new games were being introduced all the time. These games could take hours to play, which was perfect for a lazy weekend afternoon or evening. Families would set up the board, roll the dice, and lose themselves in trying to bankrupt each other in Monopoly or solve the murder in Clue. What made these game nights special was the interaction. There were no screens to stare at, no headphones blocking out the world, just people sitting around a table talking, laughing, and competing. Kids learned valuable skills like taking turns, following rules, and being a good sport, whether you won or lost. Parents got to relax and play without worrying about chores or work. It was simple entertainment that brought families together. And in a time before endless entertainment options, a good game night was something everyone looked forward to. Fact 12. Washing the car. Was a Saturday ritual. Saturday afternoon in the 1950s often meant one thing for Dad: washing the car. This wasn't just about keeping the car clean. It was a ritual that many men took seriously and even enjoyed. The car would be pulled into the driveway or parked on the street, and out would come the bucket, the sponge, the hose, and a few old rags for drying. The process was methodical. First, you'd hose down the entire car to remove loose dirt and dust. Then you'd fill a bucket with soapy water and start washing from the top down, making sure to get into all the nooks and crannies. The chrome bumpers and trim would get special attention because keeping that chrome shiny was a point of pride. After the washing came the rinsing, and then the careful drying with old towels or chamois cloths to prevent water spots. Many men would also wax their cars on a regular basis, which was an even more time-consuming process. You'd apply the wax in circular motions, let it dry to a haze, and then buff it off until the paint gleamed. A properly waxed car would shine like a mirror, and neighbors would often come by to admire your work and chat about cars. The whole process might take 2 or 3 hours, but nobody rushed through it. Kids often got involved in car washing too. They might help with the rinsing, or they'd be in charge of cleaning the hubcaps and white walls. Sometimes they'd just play in the water, which was fine because it was all part of the weekend experience. The finished product was a source of pride, and a clean car on Sunday morning was a sign that you took care of your possessions and cared about appearances. This Saturday afternoon ritual brought neighbors together, gave men a chance to show off their automotive knowledge, and kept the family car looking its best. Fact 13. Lawn mowing was a neighborhood symphony. If you were trying to sleep in on a Saturday morning in the 1950s, good luck. By 8 or 9 o'clock, the neighborhood would come alive with the sound of lawnmowers, and this symphony of grass cutting would continue throughout the morning. Every homeowner took pride in their lawn, and Saturday morning was lawn day. You'd hear the distinctive sound of push mowers going back and forth, punctuated by the occasional power mower, which was still a relatively new invention. Most lawn mowers in the early 1950s were still the manual push-reel type. These required muscle power to push, and they made a distinctive clicking sound as the blades rotated and cut the grass. It was hard work, especially on a hot day, and by the time you finished, you'd be sweating and ready for a cold drink. Power mowers started becoming more common as the decade progressed, but they were expensive, loud, and temperamental. Many men preferred their reliable push mowers to these noisy new machines. The lawn itself was a statement about who you were as a homeowner. A well-maintained lawn meant you were responsible and took pride in your property. A neglected lawn meant you were lazy or didn't care what the neighbors thought. There was social pressure to keep up with the Joneses, and if your neighbor had a pristine lawn, you better believe you'd be out there trying to make yours look just as good. Lawn care was men's work in the 1950s. Dad would handle the mowing, while Mom might work on the flower beds or garden. Teenage boys would often be assigned the mowing duty, and many earned their first money by mowing neighbors' lawns. The smell of fresh-cut grass became synonymous with Saturday mornings, and even though it was work, there was something satisfying about standing back and looking at your freshly mowed lawn, with those perfect diagonal lines showing where the mower had been. Fact 14. Downtown shopping, on Saturday before everything closed. Saturday was shopping day in the 1950s, and not just for groceries. Downtown districts bustled with people running weekly errands and buying clothes, hardware, and other essentials. With stores closed on Sundays, Saturday was the only day many working families had to shop, keeping the streets lively from morning until closing time. Department stores anchored downtown shopping. These multi-story emporiums sold everything from clothing and shoes to furniture and appliances. Shopping was an experience, with well-dressed clerks assisting customers, elevator operators calling out floors, and often a restaurant or lunch counter for a meal break. Women spent hours trying on clothes, men browsed tools and sporting goods, and children flocked to the toy department. Smaller specialty shops lined the streets as well. Shoe stores, hat shops, jewelry stores, drug stores, and five and dimes. Window shopping, chatting with familiar shopkeepers, and walking from store to store were all part of the experience. Everything closed by 5 or 6 o'clock, so efficiency and planning were essential. Sunday closing laws, known as blue laws, kept most stores shuttered in observance of a day of rest and worship. These rules meant Saturday shopping required strategy, knowing what you needed, where to find it, and making sure to finish before closing time. Weekend errands were structured, communal, and an essential part of 1950s life. Fact 15. Roller skating rinks were social headquarters. If you were a teenager in the 1950s, chances are you spent much of your weekend at the local roller skating rink. These indoor rinks were social hubs where kids could hang out, listen to music, and show off their skating skills. Friday and Saturday nights were packed, and the air buzzed with teenage energy and excitement. A typical rink featured a smooth wooden floor in an oval layout, a snack bar, a pro shop for renting or buying skates, and a DJ booth blasting music over loudspeakers. The DJ played everything from rock and roll to slow songs for couples' skates. When a couple's skate was announced, the lights dimmed, and boys nervously asked girls to skate with them. Skating was both a skill and a social activity. Some teens raced around the rink, while others skated slowly, chatting with friends. Falling was part of the fun, leaving many with bruised knees and elbows. Regulars knew all the best moves, while beginners clung to the wall. Rinks were safe, supervised places where parents were comfortable letting teens spend a few hours. Admission, skate rental, and a snack cost less than $1, providing a full evening of fun. In the 1950s, roller rinks represented freedom, entertainment, and a space for teenagers to be themselves. Fact 16, bowling alleys were where adults hung out. While teenagers had roller rinks, adults in the 1950s had bowling alleys. The sport experienced a huge boom, with new alleys opening across America. Saturday night bowling leagues were a major social fixture, and many adults planned their weekends around league nights. The bowling alley was part sports venue, part social club, and entirely central to weekend life. A typical alley was loud and smoky, filled with the sound of balls rolling down wooden lanes and pins crashing. Early in the decade, pins were reset by hand, and scores were tallied on paper sheets. Teams took their leagues seriously, often wearing matching shirts with sponsors' names, competing for trophies, prizes, and bragging rights. Men's, women's, and mixed leagues all had their own nights, making league membership a point of pride. Beyond the competition, bowling was social. Many alleys had a bar and grill where players enjoyed beers, hot dogs, and nachos while recounting great shots and gutter balls. The jukebox played constantly. Cigarette smoke lingered in the air, and conversations covered everything from bowling to work to politics. For countless adults, Saturday nights at the bowling alley were the highlight of the week, a blend of sport, camaraderie, and mid-century American social life. Fact 17, soda fountains and malt shops were teen territory. Before fast food restaurants dominated America, teenagers in the 1950s spent their weekends at soda fountains and malt shops. These spots, often attached to drugstores or standalone ice cream shops, featured counters with spinning stools, booths along the walls, and a jukebox playing the latest rock and roll hits. They were the go-to places to see and be seen. The soda jerk, the person behind the counter, was a key figure in teenage life. Skilled in making milkshakes, malteds, ice cream sodas, and sundaes, the best soda jerks could even put on a show while serving. Menus included cherry cokes, root beer floats, banana splits, and chocolate malteds, along with burgers, hot dogs, and fries, though sweets were the main attraction. Teenagers squeezed into booths, fed coins into the jukebox, and spent hours socializing over a single soda. Malt shops were where you caught the latest gossip, learned about upcoming parties, and maybe gathered courage to talk to a crush. Parents approved because these places were wholesome and supervised. Closing times were early, usually 10 or 11, but weekends were spent planning to return. Though eventually replaced by fast food chains, malt shops were the heart of teenage social life in the 1950s, offering a safe, fun, and music-filled space for friends to gather. Fact 18, no organized youth sports. If you were a kid in the 1950s, your weekend sports experience was very different from today. There were no travel teams, no tournaments, and no parents driving hours to watch games. Instead, kids played pickup games in empty lots, backyards, or local parks. You grabbed a ball or glove, called some friends, and figured out a game on your own. These games were self-organized and self-regulated. Teams were chosen by picking captains, and disputes about rules, outs, or safety were settled on the spot. Creativity solved equipment problems. A stick became a bat. A jacket marked a base, and pitchers retrieved wild throws if there was no catcher. Little League existed but was informal compared with modern youth sports. Practices were short, seasons local, and kids played for fun rather than scholarships or professional dreams. Weekends were largely unstructured for children, Without schedules or parental pressure, kids learned negotiation, problem solving, and independence. Playing was about creativity, camaraderie, and enjoyment, not competition. The 1950s approach emphasized pure play, giving children freedom to invent rules, explore spaces, and discover the joys of sports on their own terms. Fact 19. The Sunday newspaper was an event. The Sunday newspaper in the 1950s was a massive publication, often 4 or 5 inches thick, delivered early in the morning. Retrieving it from the front yard or porch was usually the first task of the day. The paper was divided into sections and family members staked their claims. Dad grabbed the main news, Mom took the food and lifestyle pages, and kids immediately went for the comics. The comics section, or funny papers, was a highlight for children. Printed in color at a time when most things were black and white, it featured popular strips like Peanuts, Dennis the Menace, and Beetle Bailey. Kids would spread the comics across the living room floor, reading for an hour or more, while families discussed their favorite strips over breakfast. Sunday papers also included coupons, which Mom would carefully clip for savings on groceries and household goods, plus advertisements and classifieds for sales, job listings, and items for sale. Reading the paper was a leisurely activity. Families settled into chairs with coffee or milk and worked slowly through every section. Unlike today's rapid digital scanning, the Sunday newspaper combined information, entertainment, and ritual, making it an essential part of the 1950s weekend experience. Fact 20. Early bedtime, even on weekends. One aspect of weekend life in the 1950s that would shock kids today was the early bedtime, even on Saturdays. While children might stay up slightly later than on weekdays, most were in bed by 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Teenagers could stretch it to 10, but staying up until midnight or later was almost unheard of. Early bedtimes made sense given the structure of the day. Saturdays began with cleaning chores, and Sundays started early for church. There simply wasn't much to do late at night. Television stations signed off by midnight. Stores and restaurants closed early, and the world seemed to shut down. Families naturally adapted to this schedule, and bedtime routines were strict. Pajamas, teeth brushing, washing faces, and maybe a bedtime story or a few minutes of reading. Once lights were out, sleep was expected. Even adults followed an early schedule. Without late-night TV, internet, or smartphones, the day started and ended early. By modern standards, it seems extreme, but in the 1950s, winding down by 9 or 10 on a Saturday was perfectly normal. Early bedtimes reflected the era's emphasis on routine, family structure, and healthy habits, shaping life in ways that seem almost alien today. Saturday was shopping day in the 1950s, not just for groceries. Downtown districts buzzed with people running errands and buying clothes, hardware, and essentials. With stores closed on Sundays, Saturday was the only day many families could shop. Department stores anchored the scene, selling everything from clothing to furniture, with clerks assisting customers, elevator operators calling floors, and often a lunch counter. Women tried on clothes, men browsed tools, and kids headed for the toy department. Smaller specialty shops, shoe stores, hat shops, drug stores, and five and dimes lined the streets. With most stores closing by 5 or 6 and Sunday blue laws in effect, Saturday, shopping was a planned, communal, and essential part of 1950s life.